Hey everybody, Eric with MountModernLife.com. Hope you guys are doing great today. And we're going to be tackling a pretty simple project, and that's creating a planked wall using reclaimed wood back here by our office in the bedroom. And there's a few different reasons you may want to take on a project like this. It's a good way to add character, texture, a little bit of history, or even cover up some imperfections that may be in your wall from previous RV items. And the reclaimed wood we're going to be using is actually this reclaimed cypress. We picked it up from our cabin wedding venue in Mars Hill, North Carolina, quite a few years ago. But one thing that's important to note about the reclaimed wood is that if you're going to get it and it's not already cleaned up, you may want to go ahead and get it planed down for a couple different reasons. One is that it'll give you a smooth surface on one side so that it'll adhere easier to the wall. But two is that by getting it planed down, it's going to thin it down and take away quite a bit of the weight. And when you're in an RV, that's pretty important. Now, as far as if you're looking to find reclaimed wood, there's a few different places you could go. You can look at salvage yards, lumber yards, or even some antique venues. And then you could also use companies such as Stickwood. We had considered them in the past, and it's just a wood that's already extremely thinned down, and it already has adhesive on it as well. So something you may want to look into. Now, with reclaimed wood, sometimes, especially nowadays, it can get a little bit more expensive. So if you want to go a more cost-effective route, you could always go to your big box stores or Amazon and get newer wood and use that as well and still get a great look. But anyway, to give you a little bit of a backstory on kind of our process with this specific space in our RV, it's kind of been an up and down process. So in the very beginning, what we wanted to do was exactly what we're about to do today, and that's create a planked wall back here. But we were running a little short on time and we wanted to get something up. So we went and got a rock wallpaper. And it was pretty much immediately after we got it up there that we realized that we didn't really like it. It did last a couple weeks before we took it down and just decided to paint it white. And over the years, we've done a couple different things in order to kind of add texture and a little bit of character, such as adding baskets or pictures and things like that. And that worked all right over the years. But now that Katie's using this primarily as her desk for her computer, when we use items like a basket or a picture back here, not only can they get in the way, but they're definitely covered up by her computer anyway. So by going with this planked wood wall, we're going to be able to add that character and texture and history that we want while not creating an uncomfortable space for Katie. But anyway, that about wraps that up. Let's go ahead and dive into the materials you guys will need. So the first thing we're going to do is actually remove our desktop and the flip up section of our desk. And the reason we have to do this is because, one, we need to paint the wall black. That way, whenever we put our wood planking up here, if there are any cracks or imperfections in the wood, it's not going to be white poking through and shining out. And at the same time, the wood is going to add a little bit of depth here on the wall, so we are going to have to adjust the desk just a little bit when we put it back in place. But anyway, let's get our desk removed. Now that the desktop is out of the way, along with the flip-up section of the desk, it's time to get to painting this. But we did think it was important to note here that for this specific wall, we do have a light switch and our slide-out switch here. So before we even start painting, we're going to go ahead and pop these switches off. And then that's going to make it easier to paint, but then also easier to go ahead and attach the planking and get the openings that we need in the planking with these off. And then once we're done, we'll come back and put them right where they're supposed to go. But anyway, we'll pop these off and get to painting. It never fails. I always cut my fingernails right before I need them. Now, it is important to note here that before you go pulling light switches off and things like that, you're going to want to make sure that your 12-volt power supply is turned off. All right, so now we've got our slide out button unscrewed. We're going to go ahead and pull it out. Now, I'm not going to get into how this works or anything, but I do want to add a side note here, and that's just that once you start unplugging items, especially with multiple wires hooked up, it's always a good idea to take a picture of how the wires are plugged in, and then that'll make it easier when you come back in order to plug them back the way they're supposed to go. But anyway. Now to tape it off before we get to painting. All right, so our wall is all painted and dried and ready to go, and it's by no means perfect, but it's just there in case there's cracks and things like that. But anyway, it's getting kind of late, so we're going to come back in the morning and finish it up. All right, so we're going to go ahead and finish up this project today, and the first thing I need to do is get some of my wood cut, so we're going to measure it out. So it looks like we're about 17 7/8. So here we are, we have all of our boards cut down to size, and we actually took them and kind of played with them a little bit on the wall to get the order that we wanted. And then after that, we went ahead and numbered on the right side of the back of the board. That way we know which board goes where, but we also know that if the number's on the right side of the back of the board, that's the side that's going to be going against over here. Now, one thing to note before we start putting these up here is that this is all reclaimed wood, so there are going to be gaps and crevices here and there just because the wood is extremely old. But anyway, let's go ahead and get them nailed into position. All right, so we're putting our first piece in, and one thing you may want is a rubber mallet. This will just help you kind of make sure that you've got it firm and secure where you want it into position before you come in with your nail gun. All right, so here's our board with the holes notched out, and the way I did it is I kind of put the board in place, and then I made my markings on which side it was on, and then I marked on the wall how high it was up where the board went. Now, as you can see here, our board's actually slanting down, and we lost a couple pieces as we were cutting because it is reclaimed wood, so it's a little older. But because of it going down at an angle, I had to kind of cut at an angle in order to make it fit right. So anyway, that's why it looks kind of off, but once we get this into position, get the new piece up, and then get the outlets on, it's actually going to cover up these openings so you won't even see them. All right, so here we are, all our wood's attached and everything's in place. I actually had gotten all the way up to the top and realized I forgot to cut the grooves out of this top board here. So we had to take that off and do it, but now all that's done. And we actually decided that the light switch cover and the slide out switch cover, we're gonna paint both those black. So while that's drying up, we're gonna go ahead and caulk around the edges to give it a more finished look. So here we are, we've got all of our wood into position. We've got our new painted light fixture switches and slide out switch back in position. We think it looks really good. We really like the black a lot more than the brown it was before. But then also we went ahead and took some caulking and caulked along the wall and along this outside edge. Now, something to note here is that our wood is a little bit thicker than the lip from our trim that was already in position. So when we caulk this side, we actually let the white caulk cover the edges of the wood that sticks out, and that kind of helps it fade away into the white wall, which is nice and going to work great for us. But if you guys are considering creating a planked wall in your own RV, and you notice that one of the edges is going to be in a frequently trafficked area or something you're going to notice a lot, you may want to consider adding a trim piece on the side in order to make it look a little bit more finished. We're not going to do that, but just something to consider if you are tackling this project in your own RV. Now, on top of that, we did go ahead and add a layer of sealer on the wood in order to help the color and texture pop out a little bit more. But anyway, it's on to getting the desk back installed, and then we'll come back with our final thoughts. Here we are, our planked wall is all finished up and we love the way it turned out. And we really hope that the information we shared was helpful for you guys if you're looking to tackle this project. But we did want to mention that we do sort of have a love-hate relationship with reclaimed wood. We always love the way that it looks when we're done. It's because it brings in the history, the patina, and just the overall feel of the reclaimed wood. But sometimes it can be a little difficult to work with because all the wood planks that you have may not be the same size and dimensions, and there may be some slants here or there. So just keep that in mind. But if you are looking to use reclaimed wood and you want it to be a little easier, you can focus on getting some that's already been planed down and made square by a professional wherever you pick it up from. Or if you want, you can actually go to some of the big box stores and they actually have new wood that looks like reclaimed wood, kind of what we used here on our sofa, which sometimes can make it a little bit easier to work with. For us specifically, we try to use it whenever we can, and we'll continue to do that even though some of the frustrations occur. But anyway, that about wraps it up for today's video. We really hope that this information was helpful for you guys. If you have any questions or comments, definitely feel free to leave them below or reach out to us at mountainmodernlife.com. And don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you guys again soon.